Kevin J. Johnston here, freedomreport.ca. I have Mike Phillip from Americanuckradio.com on the screen behind me right here and right now, and we have a lot to discuss about the current state of affairs in Canada and the world. Mike, thank you so much for joining us again. How's life?
Life's good. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. And I looked at the list of topics of things that you wanted to discuss today, and the wheels have been turning, and I'm looking forward to getting into the subjects that you've picked out. So if you want to go ahead and introduce what direction you want to go here.
Well, we certainly will, and this is something that my team here, we had a round table discussion, and when I say that, I mean Skype call. But we're all talking about the things that are really bugging all of us. And naturally, of course, there's rampant corruption Canada-wide. The Canadian dollar may crash. Jihadi Justin Trudeau is a traitor. So is the entire Liberal Party. Kathleen Wynne, Premier of Ontario, is a sexual deviant who wants to sexualize children. In your province, you have Rachel Notley, leader of the NDP party, who can't wait to kowtow to Islam and wraps herself up in a bedsheet to look like a moron. You know, all these things bother us. But what's really bothering me more so is closer to home here, Canadian culture. Obviously, if you go to Quebec and Eastern Ontario and the Maritimes, you'll see a very strong Catholic church or Christianity-based or induced culture out there. Have a look at Quebec City and all the beautiful cathedrals and churches that it has, or even Montreal with Notre Dame downtown. I mean, it's a stunning piece of artwork. But my big question here, and so is the team's question, is where the hell is the Catholic Church now, and the Presbyterian Church, and the Armenian Church, and the Chinese Catholic Church, and there's a few others. Who else do we have there? The Anglican Church, the Church of England, all these people. Where are all these churches in helping out parents recognize what's wrong with the country? Why are the churches not stepping up saying, hey, Antifa, this anti-fascist group who are behaving themselves like Hitler's brown shirts, they're around the country and they are recruiting. That's the only way I could word that. They're recruiting your kids to join this bizarre army that walk around town screaming, shouting, and assaulting people to achieve nothing. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization pretending to be a non-racist entity that supposedly helps people. But, you know, even the Black Panthers, back when they started up under Huey Lawton there, we had them feeding black kids. They had a breakfast program in place. They were doing their best to help. Black Lives Matter, they are going out of their way to destroy. And of course, then there's Islam with female genital mutilation now starting to become rampant in the United Kingdom and beginning to flare up in states like Michigan, Minnesota, and now, unfortunately, Calgary, Alberta. Why is the church not talking about this? Where is the church in this battle? Mike.
All right, well, I'd like to address a few things there. First of all, in my opinion, and I don't care who this offends, I'm not a fan of the Catholic Church, and this is just the Catholic Church showing its true face. I'll say that first of all. There's a difference between Christianity and Catholicism. I'm not going to get too far into that, but addressing your main point, why are the churches not warning about this? Because they've simply turned their back on their own doctrine and made their own way, and they're a bunch of foam rubber backbone yellow cowards that can't stand up for anything because they are kowtowing to the religion of political correctness. And I grew up in Pentecostal churches. I was fed a long list of useless information that would not give me any skills in life, and I was dragged kicking and screaming to church by my parents because they wanted to do the right thing. And I would wear a Guns N' Roses or a Motley Crue shirt underneath my coat and, you know, proudly take it off at church and just to show everybody what a dumbass I was. But here's the deal. There are a set of laws that everybody succumbs to, no matter if you like it or not. And we used to teach it to our kids through the Torah or the New Testament, through parables, through stories. And I'll give you a really good example, the story of Pinocchio. We used to teach our kids about Pinocchio, the little wooden boy that wanted to be real. Well, one of the things that happened in that story was Pinocchio was given money by his dad to buy books, and he ran into some bad kids that convinced him to buy candy with it. And then they said, follow us, and they went to a place where they could drink alcohol and punch each other out and act like a bunch of dipshits. And what happened was they were taken into slavery and turned into donkeys. Now, this is a very simple principle that's played out over and over and over again throughout time. When a society starts to break down and lose its way and become self-serving and selfish, another nation is going to rise up that's going to take you into slavery. It has happened over and over and over again. Now, the United States wiped out Nagasaki and Hiroshima. People always want to say the USA is the worst country in the history of the planet because they were crazy enough to use nukes. Let's go back to what Japan was doing to China. Go back and watch the rape of Nanking. Oh. And then what happened during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Now, this is all warned about in the old prophetic books of the Torah. The prophet Isaiah talked about how a nation that loses its way and turns its back on God will be enslaved. Women and children will rule over you. There will be no justice in the land. There will be poverty. There will be sickness and disease. And I would submit for your consideration that Canada is going into that exact same pattern.
Now, that I agree with. I mean, you want to talk about women and children are running the show these days. That's absolutely the truth. Look, even on the street that I live on, you know, there's I could think of 5 houses, 5 homes, if you want to call it that, where the women absolutely rule the roost, and they rule their men with fervor and with hatred. There's always that miserable look on their face. You know, women, I've drawn the conclusion that women would like to be leaders, but once they're given that capacity, they realize they don't like it. And instead of continuing to be a leader within the household or within the company they're working for, they just become extremely miserable. And weak men will fall for it. Weak men will see a woman losing her temper and doing that kind of stuff, which my neighbor does. The woman who lives next door to me does that. She gets mad and, I told you! And the husband, instead of staring at her saying, get control of yourself, stop it, there's people looking out here, have some self-respect, have some respect for your children and me. He doesn't do that. He just, you can see him, the big exhale. And that's just one example, but I'm seeing this everywhere. This is not just on the street that I live on. This is everywhere. And, you know, I had to pull my son out of Boy Scouts just because of that, because there were no more male leaders. It was all extremely overweight women running the show. And everything that they ran was stuff like making kids sit down on the grass and listen to other kids who are 20 years old talking at length about Garbage Island. That there's a big island of garbage in the Pacific Ocean. Well, no, The Boy Scouts are supposed to learn how to pitch tents and how to tie tarpaulins up to trees. They are they're supposed to wrestle, dodgeball, tag.
Learn to use a knife.
Thank you very much. None of that was there. None of it. And that's the problem when you put women in charge, is that they will go to biology. I'm not saying women are evil for this. I'm saying that they will follow the pre-programmed bits in their biology and become mother-like and do everything that the kids don't want, but everything that they think is right. And subduing a child by making them sit down instead of saying, hey, do me a favor, go run and behave like a complete ass for the next 15 minutes. Come back tired. Yeah. They don't do that. It's all sit and be quiet. You know, we got to talk about the planet warming up, which is not that kind of nonsense. So, yeah, you're right, Mike. I'm sorry to interject on your point there, but no, you are correct. And Canada is being run by women and children these days. Well, the men are not men.
It's the same pattern over and over again. I saw an interview with a man that was around during the Chinese Cultural Revolution, and he said that what they found was that the most devastating soldier to maintain control over a small community was a prepubescent girl, because their hormones were all over the place. And if mom or dad said, you can't go out tonight, that was a personal slight that they would report their own parents for, not understanding the consequences. And so they were given political power. It's the same recipe for disaster that has happened over and over again throughout history. And what women need to understand is that you're being used to bring down your own society. Now, that is not to say that women cannot be good leaders. My own wife was the youngest female president of our city's Chamber of Commerce 2 consecutive terms. She actually went on a board that was formulating policy to go to the federal government for communities. Now, she is a libertarian fiscal conservative, and she did a very good job of that. But you know what? When she come home, she made sure that I had dinner on the table every night. She didn't turn it into something where she had to own the house. And you know what? I often tell people, my wife is my property. Now, all you feminists out there watching this are just going to be, your heads are going to explode. But let me tell you this.
All right, let me hear.
I'm her property as well.
There we go. Hey, you know what? I had that conversation with my wife, and she says now with your newfound fame, she sees that there's women looking at me in a different light than they would have. I've always been an entertaining guy, but women, when they're watching me do comedy skits or lecture comedies or even educational programming, they wouldn't look at me with, that's a man. But they're doing it now, which I understand, because there are no men in this country, except for you and I, who are speaking with any type of authority or speaking with any type of masculinity. So
and
she,
listen,
so
let me
she
just
says,
interject
no,
there.
go ahead.
Being a man doesn't mean that you run around pounding the shit out of everybody whenever you feel like
Thank
it.
you
It
very
means
much.
controlling yourself.
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
However, you're mentioning the property thing there.
Yeah.
As this conversation came up, it was really hilarious. I had a radio station here in Hamilton on called Funny 820. And all they do is they play 30-second to maybe 2-minute comedy clips all day. That's all they do. And the one clip comes in saying, why is it that men are okay with cheating, but they're not okay with their wives cheating? And the guy makes the reference saying, well, listen, think about women. They have a purse. And think about men. We got a baseball bat. Now, so if you puked on your baseball bat 2 or 3 times in a week, you'd still use it with a smile on your face. But if you puked in your purse twice a week, you'd throw it out. All right? So she says, nobody's puking on my baseball bat. And I said, well, okay, you were the smart one. You married it 16 years ago. Good for you. It's yours. I have absolutely no problem with that at all. So your point of you are each other's property, I get it. You're utilizing the term to get the feminists going, but you're not wrong.
I'm not
You're
wrong at
certainly
all.
not
It's
wrong.
even in the terminology. Think about it. She is my wife. I am her husband. We have a legally binding contract in our marriage certificate that actually, and we could go down a long road with that. That contract supersedes any contract perceived or negatory with any government official or anything or any court in the land. That is our contract.
Yep.
And people need to understand. I love how you go into contract. You were talking about people need to teach their kids about contracts and how they work, because you can't, listen, a fraudulent contract cannot stand up. It doesn't hold any weight. I can't go to a 4-year-old child and say, if you make an X on this piece of paper, it means that I have to give you candy. And the kid gets all excited and makes the little mark, and then I say, oh, but down here it says you got to play in traffic. Sorry, you signed it. That is a fraudulent contract. It is color of law. It does not work, and it will not stand up in a court of law. And that is what happens to citizens of this country and the United States of America every single day. They walk into courtroom not understanding their legal rights obligations and contractual obligations towards each other between them and their government or the court. And this isn't what we discussed. This is kind of taken on a life of its own. But I like how you hit on that, because this is something that I've pondered and actually put into use, and it worked in the past.
Well, it does work. So what we'll do, let's go full circle now.
Right.
Let's get back to the original question. Because you did address quite a bit of it by stating that even the Catholic Church, which is supposed to be the most powerful church in the world, is following the dogma and the rule of law of political correctness, even though there is no law within it. It's just a very odd behavioral pattern that everyone has taken on. I long for even the 1940s, where everyone just said what they felt like, and maybe once in a while it went to fisticuffs, but that was the end of it. We have to be able to express ourselves in any way possible. And the worst part of it is that we have white people telling white people that there's a white supremacy problem in this country.
Whoa.
It's all that, right?
What people want to really know, Kevin J.
Yeah.
Do you disavow Hitler?
Do I disavow Hitler?
Do you disavow Hitler?
I disavow where he took his policy.
Not enough.
No, I have to clarify that. Let me tell you why. Because I've done my research into this. Because I know the history of Germany, and what's happening to Canada right now is what's happened already to Germany in the past. But we don't talk about Germans' history prior to Adolf Hitler because everyone's embarrassed by it. But we had Germany falling apart because everybody abandoned not just religion, but abandoned class and abandoned the family unit. The family unit had broken down. We had people going to Berlin from all over the world so they could have sex with men, with women, with children, with animals. They could have all kinds of really weird fetishes be taken care of. And everyone began to neglect their duties. And the country obviously fell apart. So when Hitler comes into power, he does everything right up to killing Jews. That was the mistake that he made two mistakes. He made the mistake of killing Jews, and he made the mistake of invading Russia. But
he killed a lot of people, and not one was more important than the other. But I like where you started, because look at the history of the Weimar Republic. Okay, Germany was given crippling sanctions after World War I, where they had to pay reparations to France and England, and the German people were suffering. The Deutschmark, or the Weimar Republic, what were they using? Marxes? And you had to have a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. Yeah. The currency was so badly devalued.
Sorry, you're right. I didn't hear the word there. Yes, what you were saying is the German currency at the time was so devalued that there are photographs, historical photographs, and people, you should all look it up, where German currency in bundles like this were being used by children in the streets as toys. Literally, people would raid the mint and the banks and take all this currency out. But you're correct. It was a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. People actually stopped taking all German currency in every way, and they began trading in jewelry, gold, and clothing and services. Yeah. That's how bad it was. Children, they're building forts in the street with German money. People, look it up for yourself. But here's the point I want to make, though, is that Hitler comes in with his youth. He goes to the youth and he teaches them how to be proud. He says, no women in the army. Men do not need the distraction. Our men are going to fight and our women are going to raise our children. He had classes on how to be a homemaker, how to iron clothes, how to cook, how to clean, how to be a decent person, how to feed babies with your breast and with a bottle. All of this stuff was taught to women so that he could have a strong family unit and then a strong country. And it worked. It worked incredibly well until he made some really stupid decisions. But that's what happens when ego gets in the way of logic. Nonetheless, our country right now, Canada right now, is like Germany pre-Adolf Hitler. It's going down the toilet fast because now every sexual fetish out there is open season. And the churches that used to frown on this stuff are allowing it to happen and saying nothing about it. And I'm going to tell you flat out, it's not cool and it's not right for a man to be walking around town wearing a dress with a sling and rubbing his ass on anybody that he feels like rubbing on just because that's his fetish. It's not right. You know, if we did that in the 80s, we'd get A, our asses kicked, and B, arrested. Now it's encouraged. Now we're saying, oh, it's okay. I mean, that's his inner feeling. Let him do it. Don't come
Listen,
in. Don't come into my office
Jesus
like
Christ, what famously said that if you're going to invade a home, you bind the strong man. Okay, you take away any protection that that home has beforehand, so that you're unopposed in your hostile takeover. And that is what's happening in our society today.
Yep.
And it's all they always want. We talked I brought up in the beginning. Do you disavow Hitler? If you look at what's happening with Trump right now, and you can't confess enough for these people, and you see this over and over again. We talked about Hitler getting too big for his britches. Anytime that a man thinks he's God, heads are going to roll. And you see it through government systems throughout history that have all failed. The Caesars in Rome, Alexander the Great, the Medes and the Persians, and King Darius. Everybody's seen the movie 300. I am a generous God. But God had to bleed, and once God bleeds, the sharks start circling. And they always want you to confess. Kevin, do you remember that footage from North Korea when Kim Jong-un, his father and predecessor Kim Jong-il, died? They had soldiers out with public displays where everybody had to cry the loudest and mourn the best over the death of the God man, or you would go to jail and your family would get put in a prison camp. And it's the same thing today.
Well, the Soviet Union had that too. The Soviet Union had that, where you had to keep applauding for everything that Stalin said, and the first one that stopped clapping went to a gulag. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's all showmanship.
And you see the same. And it's the same. Hey, it's the same thing with Christianity. The Bible says, "Every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord." It's all about controlling your thoughts and the words that come out of your mouth, because your words have power and they carry weight. Why do you think the Canadian government wants to make it illegal to say that somebody is their correct gender? They want to take away the power of your speech. That's how important this is. And every single religion or government system, it's the same thing. Look at Islam. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. You have to confess with your mouth, otherwise you're a heretic or an infidel.
Yes.
It's the same pattern over and over again.
And unfortunately, in Islam, it goes one step further, and that is you have to pay Allah as well to be able to get into paradise. You have to pay with your prayer. In the beginning, it was something ridiculous, like you had to pray 30, 40 times a day, and they brought it down to 5. And if you read the rules, you can still make up all your prayers at bedtime. You don't actually have to do it, but everyone's got it ingrained in their minds that I am committing the worst atrocity and sin known to man if I don't praise Allah with my forehead on the floor and my ass in the air. It's all control. So, Mike, we're out of time on this subject here. Let's just go back to the original question. What's wrong with the Christian-based churches on this? And I think you and I can agree on it is absolute cowardice and a kowtowing not to Islam but to political correctness. Is there any last conclusion you'd like to draw on that?
I'd just like to say, get your shit together, Canada.
Well, I certainly agree with that.
And listen, anybody out there freaking out thinking that Kevin and I are Nazis, no, we're not, okay? But listen, Nazis did not kill a quarter as many people as socialists. If you look at the Soviet Union, if you look at Cambodia, if you look at China, all these Antifa guys, listen, those laws, you want the government to be big enough to take away freedom of speech from other people, they're going to take it away from you. Thomas Jefferson once said, a government that's big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take away everything you have. And I don't know what happened to the anti-war movement of the 60s. It used to be about stopping war and down with government. All of a sudden, it's been flipped on its head, just like what you were talking about with the Black Panthers. And all of a sudden, the whole social justice movement is about do everything your government tells you to do.
Yes, we want more government in our lives, and we want less.
Confess.
Less family unit. And by the way, Antifa, their big message is death to the white man, even though they're young white males saying this.
Yep.
Cuckoo.
Yeah.
The lunatics are running the asylum. That's right, man. It's cultural suicide. It's national suicide, and it is insane. And we have to go. This is Mike Phillip right here from Americanuckradio.com, part of the GCN network. Mike, thank you very much for joining us today, and have yourself a good one. I'm Kevin J. Johnston from freedomreport.ca.